a little bit about me. I've been with Cisco for 3 years now, and the whole time I've been working on coming up with career resources for all of you at Cisco Networking Academy. And it's been a lot of fun doing this. I am in Arizona. It's a state that is southeast of California, for those of you who are familiar with U.S. geography. So, we were talking about it a little earlier. It's a lovely state, very nice weather in the wintertime because it doesn't get too cold here. Why this series might be relevant to you. I thought that would be kind of something for us to start off with. You know, we do have a lot of you on the call, so you obviously have some motivation to know why it's relevant. But I always want to make sure that I cover the reasoning as to why Kara and I decided that this series is important. And it's because employers tell us all the time that they see a skills gap between the candidates that are applying for jobs and what they ideally would like to see in their workplace. And so we've done research, and it's global research that we've conducted and accessed, and we've identified some top non-technical skills that are in hot demand by employers. So we're going to make sure that this series examines them, and we've broken it up into 5 clusters, and so that's why there's 5 sessions. And you'll see how each of the sessions tie into one another, and the skills build off of each other. So some of these skills you're going to learn are self-taught. You practice them, you make them a part of your daily life, and then you bring them into the workplace and you grow them. They become even stronger skills. And so you'll see how that works. We'll give you some examples of how you can apply them in your daily life. And we're going to give some pretty basic ones just because since this is a global call, we all come from different walks of life, have access to different things, but there's a few basic things that all of us are going to be doing. So we try to find examples accordingly. And one other thing is, the reason why we feel this series is important is when you know what skills are in demand, you now have them identified in your mind, and you can look for them. Look for opportunities in your volunteer work that you do, or say there's a school project going on and you have the ability to display some of these, project management skills or time management, leadership. Once you know what you're looking for, it's easier to find it everywhere. It's like, sometimes you spot a color car that you really like, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, it's everywhere. I see it everywhere I go. I'm not sure how many of you have had that kind of a moment, but it's kind of similar to that. That's why we're making sure to pinpoint these ideas and bring them to the foreground for you all. And the reason why I'm going to bring them up and make sure that you guys are all aware of it is because it's going to be kind of like you're building muscle memory of these skills. And so when you put them into practice every day, you'll grow stronger. So think of it in that way. Think of these sessions as a way to explore how to actively work on them. And so we're going to have a few ideas on how you can practice these skills and homework. So go ahead and take out a pen and paper or open up a Word document on the side of your computer screen so you can, side by side, look at the WebEx, and then look at your Word doc and take notes in there, just so that way you can make sure you practice these skills afterwards. All right, so with that, we're going to start by going over the poll results. And the vast majority of you are looking for a job right now, but there are still a good number of you who aren't searching for a job right now, and that's good to know. I'll make sure that the examples I give are relevant to both audiences. And it looks like most of you find that your organizational skills are most strong. And then, after that, it's a bit of a variation between the other skills. A few of you are confident that you can perform all of the skills, and that's fantastic. If you if you are really good at organization, time management, project management, and knowledge auditing, that's fantastic. And hopefully today it just reinforces what you know. And if I can shed some light on some new pieces on these skills, even better. And it looks like most of you do know that employers care about soft skills. We can't stress that enough. Employers are going to look at you for your technical skills and your non-technical skills. So when I say non-technical skills, that equals soft skills. I just like calling them non-technical skills or career skills because I don't want to undermine the importance of these skills. And so I'm glad that some of you feel that you want this help in developing the skills. And so perfect, you guys are in the right spot. And with that, let's jump into the content of the webinar. So you might be wondering, what does it even mean to manage your knowledge at work? And it means being able to efficiently handle information and resources. And so when you look at it from a personal level, think of it as handling your own knowledge or lack of, as well as your time commitments. And when I look at this, managing your knowledge at work, I break it down into 4 different skills. And you can see them on the screen right here is organization skills, time management skills, project management skills, and knowledge auditing and inventory skills. And with this, let's jump into the first skills that I want to highlight, organizational skills. This is probably one of those key foundational skills for all of us. No matter what industry you go into, no matter what career path you go into, you need to have some form of organizational skills. It's the ability to be able to wisely allocate your energy, your time, your resources in a very effective way so that you get things done. Being organized allows you to find things that you've put for, like say you're auditing your knowledge, and you put that away. Now you can find it a lot easier if you have a good organization system. And these skills, they shine through when you arrange your resume or your LinkedIn profile, how your appearances during an interview and your conversation habits as well. If you're able to organize your thoughts, that comes through when you're talking as well. And most of us have some sort of personal style or, a way that we keep things organized. And, think of it like this. How do you organize the clothes that you own? Is everything together without some kind of a system, or do you have a specific system? Like a little anecdote for you. I have a cousin who has arranged all of his pants and T-shirts and dress shirts by the type of attire, so casual versus formal, plus if it's a top or if it's a bottom. And then on top of it, it's rainbow. So, he has colors in a certain color scheme. And when you look inside, it's like, wow. I haven't even seen some retail stores that well organized. But if I go across the hall to his wife's closet, no, there is no comparison to the level of organization that he has. So that's just one way that your organizational skills come out in your personal life. And I'm sure when he is at work, he has he has a pretty awesome job in the technical field. And it's probably his ability to organize things and, compartmentalize everything that he's able to be extremely successful. I'm sure there's a lot of other things too, but let's not go into that today. So I just kind of wanted to give you that as an example so you can see how you use organizational skills on a day-to-day basis. So you're probably wondering, how does this translate to work or even getting a job? What it does is it allows you to have the ability to keep your work on track and meet deadlines and expectations because you're able to plan and schedule and going back to knowing how to store files and keep things organized and being efficient at conducting your job. Look at, so if you're using a laptop or a computer, how do you organize your files? Is everything on the desktop, or do you have folders and you have things stored within the folder? And how exactly are you organizing things? Do you organize it by class projects? Do you organize it by the type of project or the type of file? Think about it. You have some sort of organizational skill there. And so the way that I'd like to have you apply this skill is doing something that everyone does on a daily basis. And that is, you're going to, in the next 24 hours or so, examine how the books are organized in your house or home. Are they, in a separate area altogether, or are they scattered around in the house? Are they organized by, school books versus fiction versus nonfiction? Are they color coded in some manner? There's going to be some system there. I want you to go look at them, identify what the system is. If, depending on who you live with, do you need to ask permission for rearranging it? Then please do so. Don't get in trouble because I asked you to do something. But if you can, I would say go ahead and rearrange the books. Look at it very critically and think, what is the most efficient way to have your books arranged? And figure that out and do it. And then say you can't actually physically rearrange the books. You can, write out the process, or even just look at the books and mentally come up with a plan. Like, if you could arrange it, what would you do? Like, would you go out and buy a shelf and, arrange books on the top shelf that are about X, and then, the second shelf is about Y? Would you put all of them with the bindings facing out? Would you stack them a little bit? Whatever your imagination desires and your organizational skills are telling you to do. Go through, it might seem like a really menial task, and you're like, why are we going to actually do this? But think of it as a way to practice the skill and identify how you like to do things. It's kind of like a way to be introspective and reflect upon your skill, reflect upon yourself and your own style. And it's good to be aware of that because at some point you'll be asked about it. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how does this benefit you at work? And we've seen that there's research that proves it helps you with reducing your work-related stress. It also helps demonstrate that you are self-disciplined, and that is a key skill to have. When you can self-discipline and be motivated to stay on task, that's a really important thing that employers and team members look for. And it's going to influence your reputation in the workplace as well, and whether or not you're perceived as a reliable team member. Like, are you scrambling to find that document that your manager wanted 5 minutes ago? Or were you able to send it to the manager as soon as they asked for it because you knew exactly where you keep it? So, these types of things make a difference at work. Okay. So while your organizational skills help you bring calm into the work environment, part of, being organized, I'd say, is time management skills. And, these skills are very closely related. It's hard to be really good at one and not good at the other. So you kind of build them together. So this kind of means you're accurately able to identify how much time it takes to finish certain things, how long is it going to take you to meet a deadline, and will you be actually able to do it? Like, what do you have to stop in order to meet the deadline because you need 12 hours to work on something? So, just being cognizant of what you need in order to complete something in advance helps make sure that you aren't missing deadlines. Think of it this way in your daily life. Are you the type of person who shows up 5 minutes early to class and are hanging out with friends, or are you the person who is habitually 10 minutes late and people just, are like, oh, they're not going to show up on time. I'm just not even going to bother trying. I'm going to tell them a doctor time so that they actually show up when I show up. Or are you someone who just shows up right on the dot. In fact, if you were told to show up at 10 a.m., you are there at 10 a.m., not a minute sooner, not a minute later. These types of things are telling signs about you and will definitely influence your reputation at work. So, being able to realistically understand how much time it takes you to do your work, it's important because it'll help you estimate how long it'll take you to complete project X, and can you meet the deadline, or do you have to tell your manager, you know what, it's not realistic, let's move the deadline right now, and then manage expectations in advance. That's always a good thing to be able to do if it's validly relevant to say that to your manager. And while working on that project, are you going to be able to take on any other projects? Because sometimes when you work on things, it's not just one project that you're working on. You're working on multiple things at the same time. Like, for instance, for me, working on this webinar, this isn't the only part of my job that I've worked on this week. There have been probably 4 or 5 other different moving things. Everything is connected, but because I'm working on the webinar, I know that I am limited on some other time heavy items that are on my task list, and so I've had to move them to next week. So that just shows an example of how you can manage your time. Some people, like me, take time management to another level, and what I do is I like to plan out my week, the previous week, and I break it down by tasks by the half hour, and I mark out, okay, I'm going to spend X number of hours prepping for this task, and then I need a half an hour to make sure I do X. And if I have that all on my calendar, I know when I look at them on Monday, I'm good to go. I know where I'm going this week, and I know what I have to finish by the end of the week to feel accomplished. And if, there's something that comes up from my manager, or, a coworker is like, hey, Jessel, I really need you to work on this, and I need it by X date, I can look at my calendar and tell them realistically, can I do this, or is there something I can shift off of my priority list to make their request happen? So I have a very detailed time management system. Not everyone needs that. I don't know if Kara is that meticulous with her time management, but everyone is efficient at some point, so you have to find what works for you. And, I'm sure Kara's system works wonderful for her, and my system works good for me as well. So just an example of how you apply the skill in the workplace. And how it's a key skill to being a good team member, and wanting people to be able to, and people wanting to work with you. How you can apply this skill starting today. Everyone has to get ready in the morning, or, at some point in their day, but usually most of us get ready in the morning. And if right now you had to estimate how much time it would take you to get ready and out the door, do you know the estimation? So this is the example for you. You might want to write this down. This has a couple components to it that I want you to answer. You don't have to tell me the answer, but these are answers that you should be able to give to yourself. You need to be at an interview by 7:45 a.m. tomorrow morning. The location is 30 minutes away without traffic, driving a car. And it's in the direction at the time in the morning when you will encounter local traffic. Question 1, what time do you need to be out of the house to make it to the interview on time? Question 2, what time do you need to be eating breakfast? Because we all know that breakfast is a very important part of your day. What time do you need to be awake so that you can get properly ready for an interview? The next question, what do you need to do today to make sure you are ready for tomorrow? And this is key, because if you manage your time well and you prepare in advance for tomorrow, and you know what you need to do, like make sure I print out my resume, make sure I pick out my clothes that I want to wear, make sure I've figured out how I'm going to get there. Am I borrowing a car from my parents or my sister, or do I have enough gas in there? These are things that if you prepare in advance, when you leave tomorrow, you're not being flustered before that. And then the fifth question is there a budget needed to make it to this interview? And you might be thinking, why do I need a budget to go to an interview? Well, think about it. Before you get your first job, usually cash is a little tight. So you might want to make sure you keep in mind, how much money do you need to have to pay for the gas to get there and to come home? Or if you're taking like a transit ticket, you need a transit ticket, like you're going to go on the bus or the train or take a cab, how much is that going to cost you? There's ways that you can estimate that using the internet to find out how much that's going to cost. And then add that to, are you going to be out and about during lunchtime? Will you need to make sure you factor in how much it costs for lunch, or are you going to be packing a lunch in advance? So that's something that you need to add to the response to question number 4, which is that question of what do you need to do today to make sure you're ready for tomorrow. And then, back to the budget, if you need to pay for printing copies of your resume, that's also another additional cost. So that's what I want you to estimate today. Off the bat, don't do much research, right? Tomorrow, go ahead and reflect upon all these responses that you have written down and find out, were you accurate on how much time it's going to take you to get ready? Were you able to predict how bad the traffic is in the morning? So if something usually takes 30 minutes without traffic from your house to go into that direction, how long would it have taken you to get there? Is it actually 30 minutes or is it an hour? And that's important that you're able to estimate that in advance, because you can't when you have to go for a work interview, you do not want to show up even 5 minutes late. For interviews, you should always be on time or 5 minutes early whenever possible. So, I briefly touched on the budgeting skills, and that's another important skill that you should all be able to handle. Obviously we're in the tech industry, and we want to be, more technically oriented. And so you might be wondering, budgeting is for finance people. Well, it's not, because you can think of budgeting skills in the realm of how you manage your time. So you budget, 20 hours this week for XYZ project, and I'm going to budget 15 hours this week for my ABC project. And so that's how you estimate things. And then at the end of the week, you can see, okay, well, XYZ actually took more time than I actually allotted for it, but ABC I got done earlier, so it worked out for me. Or it could be something where you just spend more time on both projects, and then you've worked a lot more than you were planning on it. So, it's pretty obvious how having time management skills and budgeting skills translate to the workplace. It helps you meet deadlines and your project goals. It increases your ability to be effective and efficient and productive at work. And those are all very important qualities in a good team member and a good employee. It also demonstrates ownership of yourself and that you are a responsible person if you're able to manage your time wisely. And once again, this skill, how good you are at it, will impact your reputation in the workplace and reliability as a team member. And this is important when you're your reputation at your current job is very important, because you're going to need referrals from them to get your next job. And you don't want to have any kind of negative connotation associated with you. You want to be a pleasure to work with. So it's always good to make sure you keep that in mind. We're going to jump to the next skill, and that is project management skills. The formal definition of this from the Project Management Institute defines it as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to a broad range of activities in order to meet the requirements of a particular project. That's a pretty big mouthful, and you're probably wondering, I'm not going to go and become a professional project manager. I mean, you might not want to right now, but hey, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, you decide you really want to be able to take your technical skills and marry them with project management skills and become a technical project manager, and you will be, I mean, it might be like a wonderful job for you. But what I'm covering today, what I'm talking about is not expert level project management skills. I'm talking about basic project management skills. So when you think of a project that has a defined end, a defined beginning and a defined end in time, it has a defined purpose or scope to the project, and it's a unique task. It's not a routine task that you do all the time. There's something special. And so with that, you have to think about how every one of us in some way is a project manager. There's something or another that you're going to be managing on your own. A very small project, that's fine, but you're going to be doing this throughout your life and your career at work. So, and even in school, you can probably imagine that there's a lot of projects that you work on, and you can think of it as applying these skills to those projects at school. So you can think of it as, are you trying to accomplish something, and is there an end goal? And is it something that you're creating, or is it something like, are you planning an event? There's a lot of different ways to think about it as a project. So we're going to talk about finding a job as a project in itself. And, with that, you have to be able to manage your time, map out a schedule. You need to figure out what you need to research so you have a better understanding of the companies you're looking into, the latest technologies and the trends. You have to also make sure you're keeping track of all your communications that are leaving and coming into you, into your inboxes. And, being able to manage projects efficiently, even on the most basic level, requires you to know how to be organized and also to be able to manage your time. So you can see how these skills that I've been discussing today are all they work together. So for the example that I am going to give all of you for today, most of you are looking for a job right now. And some of you are not looking for a job right now, but I imagine at some point in the future, you're going to be looking for a job. So the project is, are you ready? It is find a job. So what you're going to do is you're going to define what your goal is, and that is, I want to find job X by December 2017. I'm throwing out a date. Obviously, you have to tailor that to you. And this is kind of where you should probably be writing down the different parts of this project so that when you go tomorrow to look at this, you can reflect upon the different things that you need to make sure you're on top of. So define what your goal is. And it's nice to be able to see your goal so that even if it's something as simple as, I want to find a new job by July, and I would ideally like to be making X amount of money, and it should be in this location. By having that written down, and if it's in some place that you can see it, it reminds you, like, okay, should I be dilly-dallying and goofing off, or should I be focusing on this because, man, July's not that far away from now. So it's good to have something written down to remind yourself of your goals. Next, what you're going to want to do, you have to think about what do you need to do in order to accomplish your goal. For some of you, that might mean you need to finish off your school and your training that you're undergoing, or you need to finish off your certification if you're going for that CCNA or the CCIE, depending on what certification is applicable to you, or if you're planning on graduating college and that degree that will help you get that job, that's very important too. So write that stuff down, and you have to make sure you complete that and guesstimate on how long it'll take you to get to that point and being done with it. And list out what you need to complete, but you can also list out what you've already completed. It helps to see what you've accomplished in comparison to what you have yet to accomplish. And it helps you feel less overwhelmed, like, oh my God, there's so much to do. Like if you see 10 to-do items, and you only see that, you don't see how far you've come. Like, say you've already finished 20 things, but if you're only looking at the things that are left to be done, you're not able to appreciate everything you've already accomplished. So that's why I suggest putting both down, and so you can kind of cross it out and say, yes, I've already done it. It's a great feeling to be able to cross off something on your list. And for some of you, you graduate next week or, in 2 months from now. So that your timeline will be a lot shorter, and what you need to accomplish before you get your job or start looking for a job is a lot less. So you'll make your list of things as well. So once you know your timeline and you can investigate what it is you need to accomplish your goal, you can create a plan, set a schedule, and a budget. There's a webinar series that Kara put together on this topic if you want more direction on the whole process of getting a job. It's called Preparing for Your Career webinar series, and in just a minute we'll go ahead and put that in the chat window for you all. I actually can't remember how many sessions that is. Kara, do you remember how many sessions that is? But, it's broken up into multiple segments.
Sorry, Jessel, I was double muted. I believe it's 5.
No worries. 5. So, and they're all recorded 1 hour long sessions, and each topic, you called in experts to, talk about the different parts of searching for a job. So,
Jessel, if I could just interject for just 5 seconds. So it starts off,
sure.
and Jessel's actually a presenter in one of those sessions too, but Jessel will show you where you can, different websites and different resources that you can go to look for jobs. And I know that there's been a few questions in the Q&A about looking for jobs, even though resumes and LinkedIn profiles are already updated. But she does go over the different resources and websites that are available for you to perform your job search, what you need to do before you start your job search to be prepared. Then another colleague talks about networking and how networking is so very important in the job search process. Not computer networking, but networking as in using your people around you, your network of people to help you find a job. It goes over resume and cover letter, and it also goes over interviewing skills. I know I'm missing one, but I'll share that link in the chat window.
Fantastic. Thanks. And it was a great series, not just the session that I was part of. I'm talking about everything. All the ones that Kara had on that series were really good, and they can definitely be helpful for this. And it could be one of those things that you add to your project management of finding a job, and add it to your schedule. You're going to watch one session a week, or you're going to binge watch all 5 on the weekend and take notes and be ready to go even faster. So that's what that's the example that I want you guys to work on. And how does it translate to work? Well, you might not become a project manager tomorrow, but you will be on a team that's working on a project. And by understanding the whole process behind managing a project, it gives you a holistic view, and you understand your role in the life cycle of this project. So, it helps you also better connect with your team members and understand why their role is important on this project, or how you can maybe help make things better. So even if you aren't going to be a project manager today or in the next 10 years, you'll definitely be interacting with a lot of people who are project managers and being on projects at work. So it's important to have an understanding of what that means. And once again, this impacts your reputation in the workplace and reliability as a team member. Even if your job doesn't require project management skills, the fact that you can apply those skills and become a better employee, you might just get a raise and a promotion that you had no idea, you weren't even trying to get, because your manager might say, hey, you know what? She knows what she's doing, and let's get them in this role because I could really use their help on this. So you never know. When you're good at something, it shines through your work, even if you're not asked to do that. So that's project management skills. Let's jump to the next skill, and that is knowledge auditing and inventory skills. this might be something not a lot of you have heard of, but once I explain it, I'm sure it'll be more familiar to you, and you'll have a better understanding of what I mean by this. It's basically being able to catalog what you already know, taking stock of what you already have learned, or or what you need to learn. And what it does is, when you actually write this down and document it, it helps provide a backup resource for reference. Say you are, like when I first started my job, I had to learn how to use the new content management system, the CMS. And it was, I've used one in the past, but it was a different system. And so this is all new. And I, was trained on it, and I, wrote down notes because it was verbally explained to me, and it was visually and verbally explained. But if I hadn't written down notes, I wouldn't have been able to check myself to make sure I'm meeting all of the different requirements, because sometimes you run into errors when you're learning something new and you're putting it into practice. And so I had to troubleshoot and figure out, what did I do wrong? And because I had written it down, I was able to reference it and see, like, oh man, I forgot to add in tags. That's why it's not showing up. And I could go back in and do it and not have to bother my lead, who had taught me and trained me to do this job. So it also shows your upper management that, hey, I just have to tell this person something once, they get it, and then they go ahead and do it. Now, whether or not you caught it in the first time you were taught, that's up for debate, but at least you have something you can reference and, make it into something even better. So that's just another reason why it's good to be able to take stock of what you know. It's also important to be able to understand what it is you do know versus what it is you don't know. And by inventorying it, sometimes what happens during this process is you realize, hey, you know what? I don't understand this bit. It's like a little gap in information. I need to either go out and do some research, find some training, ask one of my coworkers or a sibling, someone who has expertise in that. You can then know where you need to build your knowledge, and now it's no longer a gap. So it's a way to find ways to improve your own knowledge and be self-reflective. It also helps with information overload. Sometimes when you start a new job, you are pounded with a lot of information, and you might forget something, and you are like, oh, man, how am I going to get through this? Like, there's so much to know. So instead of having one of those moments, if you write it down, it could help you have it as a reference in the back, reference to lean on later on. Also, now that I have that CMS notes that I took 3 years ago, say I need to train someone to be able to do the same thing, I don't have to go back in and think, okay, what is it that I do, every little nitty-gritty step, because some things become such a habit that you don't even realize you're doing something. So now if I have to train someone, it'll be really easy to train them. So that's just, an example of how it applies. So time to talk about how you're going to practice this skill. And once again, global audience, trying to figure out how to help you guys all practice this skill. I went back to one of our fundamental things that we do every day. We all have to eat. And I'm sure we all have our favorite recipe that either, your caregiver makes for you or you make for everyone else, whatever it might be. Come up with a recipe that hasn't been written down yet. And what you're going to do is you are going to capture the recipe, and that's your knowledge audit. And then you're also going to make a list of all the ingredients that you'll need for this, and that's your knowledge inventory. And it's important because you need to write down, in what order do you have to do the steps? Do you first boil the water and then add the pasta to the pot, or do you add the pasta and then boil the water? For those of you who cook pasta, you guys probably know the answer. For those of you who don't, you always boil the water first and then add pasta to the water, and add a little bit of salt as well, and oil. But anyways, this is not a cooking class. So back to the project that I want you to work on at home. So you're going to go ahead and write out this recipe, and write it out with thinking of your audience. And your audience is someone who has never made this before. So you have to be very explicit in your details. And it's a good practice. It's a good habit to have, making sure that you write things down and thinking of it from a perspective of someone who hasn't done it before, because it really makes you pull out details that you may have overlooked otherwise. So, that's just one last thing, and I'm just making sure that I've covered everything that I wanted to make sure I covered on this topic. I've covered how it relates to your workplace and how it helps you avoid information overload, and it helps you find gaps in your knowledge, and you can proactively find ways to improve yourself. And it helps improve your documentation skills. When you can combine your technical knowledge with documentation, that can really set you apart on a team, because that's one of those, it's one of those skills and coupling of skills that I know is in high demand. So when you're comfortable with documentation, it really will shine through later on. So what I want to do is do a quick recap of how you're going to apply these skills today, so you can check your notes. The first one is you're going to organize the books in your home. Either do that mentally or actually physically move the books around. Next, you're going to estimate how long it's going to take you to get to that fake interview tomorrow, and verify your estimates and make sure that they're accurate and on point. Next, you're going to create a plan to find a job. This might be something that you do and it's just a 3-month-long project, or it might be something that's a 3-year-long project. That's fine. It's still a project for you to practice your skills. And last, I want you to work on writing out your favorite recipe, or a recipe that hasn't been written down before. Make sure you're precise with the details and the measurements, because it's important that you practice the skill properly, because like I had mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, when you get into the habit of practicing these skills, a lot of these skills aren't things that need formal training to develop. You can work on them in your personal life and then be able to apply them in the workplace. All the skills that I covered today, I didn't get any formal training on them. I picked up on them through, high school and college, grad school, afterwards, planning my wedding and, I'm always planning events and stuff. So that really helped me become a better project manager, because I'm always working on different events and trying to make sure that they go off without a hitch. So I've given you ideas on how you can practice these skills, in one example, but I want you to go out and look for ways that you can make sure you practice them more. So, say there's a volunteer project, go take it, see if you can get some kind of leadership role and demonstrate your project management skills. Or, if you're working on a school project with your buddies at school, estimate how much time you're going to need for everything to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch. So there's going to be many ways that you can practice these skills. And so just want to remind you to make sure that you definitely look for opportunities to keep building these skills. And for those of you who haven't yet, I highly encourage you register for our next session. We're going to cover the power of communication in the workplace, and during the next 3 sessions after that, we'll show you how all the skills converge to build upon one another, and we'll help you set yourself apart and be one of those employees that has a holistic set of skills, and wish you guys the best. Now it's time for the question and answer session. So Kara, it's all you.
Yes, thank you, Jessel. And I just want to start off by saying, so Jessel, I know she just went over a lot of skills, and you're probably wondering why you need to know these, but she actually put in a lot of research with employers. She didn't just come up with these skills off the top of her head to present to you, but these are actual skills that employers have said that they want technically focused candidates to have. And these are also skills that they've noticed that most technically focused candidates do not have. So if you are paying attention today and you actually work on these skills, and Jessel gave great examples of how even if you're not in the work field yet, how you can start working and building on these skills, you really will give you an advantage when you go into an interview and you can, state that you do have these skills. And then just one more thing. I know in the Q&A, I was helping some people with some certification questions, and then it opened up a huge certification discussion. Jessel and I are not technically focused people, and we don't have a technically focused person on the call today because this was a career skills session. But I will share a site that you can go and ask questions. We need to stay on topic as well. So we'll be taking questions related to the content that Jessel created. We'd love to help y'all out, and I'll share my email if y'all want to email me as well. But as far as the Q&A and the questions that we'll be answering in the Q&A panel, we'll stay on topic to what Jessel just went over. But Jessel, we do have some questions that have come in. So the first question, what if your tasks are quite different and random? So time can be very different and hard to predict, such as uncalculated extra problems. Do you push back deadlines or ask for more time before accepting the task?
Well, what you could do is try to, it's called like mitigating your circumstances. And so you might say, okay, realistically, I probably could do this task within 30 minutes, but if it might take me a little longer because there might be some external factors that I'm not going to know of until that day that I actually am working on it. So you kind of build that into your estimates of time. Just because something, routinely takes you 30 minutes, factor in 45 minutes for that. So give yourself a little bit of a buffer when you estimate your time. That way you can make sure you get there, you can reach your deadlines. You can also think of it like, when you're going to go and take a drive to go for an interview, if I know in traffic it's going to take me 30 minutes, I actually give myself 45 minutes to get there, because 30 minutes in traffic is fine, but what if there's a car accident or a detour that I wasn't aware of, that the government was like fixing the roads, So it's always good to make sure you add in a buffer time, and you don't have to share with everyone that you're, including a buffer time. When you finish something early, everyone's excited. So obviously don't, double the amount of time with your buffer, but try to be conservative but realistic.
Thanks, Jessel. And sorry, I was answering another question. Let me bring up my sheet. So there's a student on the call that would like to get into project management. Do you have any suggestions on what they can do to get to that point? For example, should they go to LinkedIn and look for project management? I currently work as a technical support engineer. What tips do you have for someone who wants to become a project manager?
So I guess if you're already in the field, you're working, I would say, maybe ask your manager, are there opportunities to grow into a project management role? LinkedIn is a good idea as well. They do have some free online learning for you, so you can kind of get more familiar with project management. You can always do searches online as well. I don't know, depending on which region of the world you're in, there's probably going to be some variances on the actual project management, like technical terms and everything. It's mostly the same, but I would say, do a quick Google search and find out what's good for you in your area. But I would start off by asking, your manager and your peers and see if there's something like, are there local organizations that you could join to become more familiar, network, and build your skills that way.
Awesome. And so a student has stated that in the past they have overmanaged their time and resources. How do you find the balance between preparing and over-preparing?
Ah, man, that's a good one. it's hard to find that balance. It's a very personal thing as well. For me, I feel like you have to get to a point where you plan and you have something in mind, but when things are actually happening, you try your best to stick to the plan, but don't become extra agitated and frustrated if like, say you only allocated a half an hour to this webinar and now it's gone 45 minutes. Don't get frustrated. You have to sometimes just go with the flow and let things fall into place, because you know what, that extra 15 minutes might have just taught you something that's going to help you, with something, a week from now. So I kind of take it back to like my personal philosophy, and that is, you do what you can to control a situation, but you have to be able to step back and let things fall into place. It's kind of like a river. There's a bunch of rocks in a river, and the water is going to continuously flow. You're going to hit bumps along the way. Some might be like massive boulders, and some might be tiny little pebbles, but it's not going to stop you from moving forward. So kind of just think of it in that way. It just helps you develop character. I hope that helped. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Thanks, Jessel. And I'm just checking the Q&A again. While I'm going through the Q&A, I do want to say, I know there's a few questions about a certificate of participation for this series. If you participate in this series, so today is the first session out of 5 sessions, so it's 5 sessions that make up the Career Skills for Techies webinar series. If you participate in all 5 sessions, and that can be a combination, because we know that, sometimes you can't attend all 5 because of school and other commitments, but if you participate in all 5, whether it be attending the live sessions or watching the recordings, or it can be a combination of the two, because we'd love for you to join us live whenever you can, you can apply for a certificate of participation after the last session, so that this session of this series has been hosted. So those will be available sometime late this spring after this series is over. So Jessel, any tips for entry-level females going into the workforce? I've taken many Learning Academy courses, and I don't know how to turn them into actual experience.
Well, first off, I think you need to look at it from a more confident perspective. If you've gone through some education, you definitely have built some skill. Even today, you've built a few extra wrinkles into your brain with the knowledge that I shared with you. So whether you're female or male, be confident when you go into the workplace and look for a job. But as far as figuring out how to apply what you learned into an actual experience on your resume, or being able to discuss it on an interview or on LinkedIn, I would say go ahead and check out our webinar series. Kara and I had hosted it. We just ended it in I think November, but it was a multi-part series, and we broke down experiences into different aspects. So I think it might be helpful for you to perhaps understand what it is that employers think of it as experiences. What we had done is gone out and researched with HR managers around the world and different employers to find out what it is that they place value on as experiences, and then we took that information and brought it back to all of you. We also had some of your fellow Networking Academy peers join us on a call, and they helped explain how how their experiences translated into the workplace. So I think that'll probably be very helpful. I know it's going to take some extra time out of your day to go through those webinar sessions, but I would say that that'd probably be more helpful than me trying to cover it within a couple minutes right now.
Thank you, Jessel. And can you repeat, a student has requested that you repeat your personal philosophy that you shared.
Well, so it was kind of long-winded, but it's about how you go with the flow. You can do what you can to plan out something and set a schedule and want something to happen, but you have to be willing to yield to the circumstances. And I use the example of a river, in that, you know, a river is going to keep flowing forward and it keeps moving, but it will be hindered by small pebbles, by big boulders, and it'll change how the river flows ever so slightly, but at the end of the day, the river will continuously flow. So it's going to build character, and you'll become even stronger at the end of it. So just kind of hope that helps. And I hope I covered it.
Thank you, Jessel. And let me see. Oh, one more that I missed. I apologize. How do you get along the way when things are not going as well as planned, or that how you expected them to?
Well, I'll be honest. I am a human, so I will get frustrated. But you have to find the silver lining in whatever is happening at that instant. Say a project is being, I'm trying to think of how to respond to this without going into too much detail. Repeat the question again, Kara, just so I make sure I'm focused on.
Sure. I lost it. Give me 1 second. How do you keep going along the way when things aren't going as planned or as you expected them to be?
You kind of have to just take a big, deep breath in, clear your mind, and focus on really what is your end goal. And is the obstacle that just happened actually going to take you away from your end goal? Is there still some way to achieve it? Because sometimes what happens is you get bumped and you feel like you've been shifted off your path, but there's still a way to keep going and keep and be able to make what your well thought out plan actually happen. So, actually, Claude just mentioned something where he said, stay rooted in your craft. And that's a good point. Like, remain focused. You're going to have obstacles that come into play. And sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself is take a moment to understand the new situation, take a deep breath, be calm as you approach the problem, and you might see new opportunities because you're approaching it with a calm mindset. It actually, there's research that has been done where if you have a positive mindset when approaching a problem, you'll actually be able to see more solutions than if you were to approach that problem with a negative mindset. So I hope that helps when you have an obstacle in mind.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Jessel, and I just want to kind of add on to that. I think that a good thing to know is that majority of the time things are not going to go as planned. So if you can just accept that and learn to just be able to move on no matter what life hands you, you'll be good to go. Just learn to adapt. Jessel, we have one more question. I know we're a little over. I'm going to throw it out there just so we can say we answered all the questions. It's a time management question. How do you handle distractions such as TV, Facebook, children?
Oh, that goes back to self-discipline and, carving out time for each thing. My grandfather, I guess my husband's grandfather, his personal philosophy was eat while you eat, play while you play, and work while you work. So if you have a particular task that you are focused on, don't do something else at the same time. I know we've been told that multitasking is awesome. And yes, there's certain times when you can multitask. Like if you're cooking in the kitchen, you could have some TV on and play music. I mean, probably wouldn't want music and TV on at the same time. But like you could talk and cook and watch TV at the same time and probably get a good meal at the end of the day. But say you're working on writing up a report. If I would say at max, maybe add like music that you can handle in the background, but otherwise don't do anything else. Like I actually have taken Facebook so that I no longer have it as an easy app on my phone. Like I have to search through my app folders to get to it. And so that way during the workday, I'm not going on it as much. Although this job does require some Facebook access, so sometimes I do end up on Facebook, but it's for work. I think it just goes back to challenging yourself, maybe coming up with some kind of reward system where you can see if I can go without getting distracted from my task at hand for 5 hours, I'm going to reward myself with, and it depends on what you want. Like for me lately, I kind of just like chocolate. So I'll go and grab some chocolate. So it kind of just depends on you and what makes you happy. You could have a jar or something and like put $1 in it every time you achieve a goal. And then that could be money you use to treat yourself to something fun. So you have to come up with a system that works for you and challenge yourself to be more disciplined. It's kind of a fun game.